Part 91. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 901. Chapter 901 Preparing for the Wedding. Li Lei took her into his arms again. This time, he carefully held her little paws to prevent her from moving. He kissed her ear and asked with a smile, "Are you looking at wedding dresses?" She hummed, picked up a book from the plush carpet with her bare feet, and turned it over to him. "These are the latest models from various custom shops. I like this one embellished with pearls, and Mao seems to like this one with all the floor coverings better, the one with lotus leaves and lace. Which one do you like?" He smiled again. "Do you still consider Mao's opinion?" "Of course, it's our family," she said, scratching the back of Mao's neck with her little foot. Mao moved his ears in his sleep, turned over lazily, and continued sleeping. Li Lei looked at them page by page with her hand. They were all beautiful. Each wedding dress was designed by a famous master, and he put countless efforts into it. The effect was amazing. "Most importantly, you look good in whatever you wear." "Perfunctory with me." Classmate Xia Ling lowered her head and gently bit his hand with her teeth. He took advantage of her bad habits and asked with a smile, "What did Xiao Hui say?" "Xiao Hui is being led astray by Lin Yunan." Speaking of this, Xiaoling was a little dissatisfied. "He has become obsessed with pirates recently and is clamoring for Uncle Lin to tell him about Pirate Luffy and Somali pirates every day." Story. "I also want you to dress up as a pirate leader to steal your marriage." Li Lei. "What's on your mind?" "I'm wondering if I haven't taken care of this brat for too long." Xiaoling nodded seriously. "That's right. When this period of time is over, you should take good care of him. Don't let him hang around with Lin Yunan and get into hooligan habits." Early this morning, Lin Yunan took him to the outskirts of the city. One of the crew watched Gang Yang and specially chose the explosion scene. Li Lei was speechless. No wonder he hadn't seen his son much recently. Was he kidnapped by Lin Yunan? He gritted his teeth. This little bastard, does he still remember who his father is? Xia Xiaoling's classmate clasped her fingers sadly. He doesn't even remember who his mother is. For some reason, this kid has a special rapport with Agent Lin. Recently, Xiaoling and Li Lei have been busy investigating old cases. The two empty, lonely, and cold people, one older and one younger, got together. Starting from telling pirate stories, it progressed to running around eating, drinking, and having fun. The most extreme time was when Xiaoling saw Lin Yunan teaching her children how to gamble. Xiao Shaowai had a great time. "Every day when I get home, I fall asleep without any need for my mother to tell me bedtime stories." If this continues, he might actually recognize Lin Yunan as his father. Classmate Xia Xiaoling held her cheeks in her hands and scratched Mao with her feet. Mao was the only one to accompany me even when I was choosing a wedding dress." Li Lei felt very distressed and coaxed her softly, "Be good, I'll stay with you. When that brat comes back, I'll beat him." "Really?" Xia Xiaoling's eyes sparkled. "It's true," Li Lei assured. "Although he doesn't beat his wife, he never said he won't beat his son." "Who told the son to bully his wife?" He narrowed his eyes slightly and thought seriously about how he could beat that brat, to be honest. Classmate Xia Xiaoling clapped her hands. "We Chinese like to use a ruler to spank our children. Rulers and rulers, rules and regulations. It hurts and takes a long time to remember. But nowadays, fewer people use rulers, and some people just use it. Anyway, you are so good, this kid can't escape. Just let him know, what's so good about those martial arts movies out there? How can they compare to his own father's real skills?" Classmate Li Xiaoli, "Are you really your mother? Why do you think the style of painting is wrong?" Xia Xiaoling's classmate, "I haven't beaten him before, but I really want to try. On those mommy forums, many people said that children cannot be effective without spanking." Even the servants at home said that children can be punished appropriately when they make mistakes. But obviously, classmate Xia Xiaoling took the word appropriate seriously. Li Lei. He thought for a while and felt that it was not good for his wife to be too violent. He sighed and said, "Forget it, let's coax him to come back and watch Pirates. Maybe after watching Pirates, the little guy will be less clingy to Lin Yunan and come back to play with his parents." "What do you mean by coaxing him to come back to see the Pirates?" Xiaoling was confused. Li Lei kissed her thoughtfully. "Do you want a pirate wedding? Don't you guys like Somali pirates? We will go to Somalia to get married and let the pirates come to steal the bride. Don't worry, the big pirate leader over there is my brother, and then I take the little guy to rescue you and show him that daddy is more powerful than a pirate." This idea. Xia Xiaoling's classmate was shocked. Li Lei thought she was cowardly. "Don't dare? Forget it, let's beat that brat anyway. There are many ways to break up that brat and Lin Yunan. If seduction fails, he'll just beat him." "No," classmate Xia Xiaoling's whole body shone, "this is such a great idea." "Wow, my dear, how could you come up with such a great idea? I haven't seen a real pirate yet. He's alive." She turned around and hugged Li Lei's neck, kissing him again and again. "My husband is the best." This is the first time she calls him husband. Classmate Li Xiaoli touched his lips stupidly, and he was also very happy. Xiao Shaowai, who was watching explosions with Lin Yunan at a suburban studio, had no idea that he had unknowingly escaped being beaten. Li Lei stepped up to handle Wang Jingguan's old case. Xiaoling is not good at this, and only cares about the case occasionally. She spends most of her time ordering wedding dresses, groom's dresses, Xiao Shaowai's dresses, bridesmaids and groomsmen's groups, as well as all kinds of drinks, flowers, candy. Only then did she realize that getting married was so troublesome. As the wedding day approaches, Mrs. Xia also rushes over from the clan to help. Women are always excited to deal with these matters together. When she heard that her daughter was going to hold a pirate wedding, she also felt it was extremely romantic. "This idea is so wonderful. This kid Li Lei has more ideas than your father did back then. Your dad used a traditional wedding to send it to me, it was really." Mrs. Xia rambled on about the past, then held Xiaoling's hand and said with a smile, "Just enjoy the wedding, don't worry, those Somali pirates never dared to offend the Xia family, so they will definitely be polite to you. I will also arrange a female bodyguard for you from my mother's family and add her to the bridesmaid group." "I'm not afraid," Xiaoling said, "I believe in him." After experiencing so many ups and downs, her trust in Li Lei was almost blind. Even if there was a cliff ahead and Li Lei told her to jump off saying it was safe, she would jump without hesitation. This is the trust he has earned with his life several times. Mrs. Xia looked at her daughter lovingly, and the happiness in her eyes was reassuring. Although she is a little reluctant to let go, she has no choice but to stay in college. It is really great to be able to marry a man who loves her so much. Mrs. Xia turned her head and gently wiped the tears of joy from her eyes. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 902. Chapter 902 Interrogation of Xia Yu. Xiaoling has been choosing for a long time and finally decided on the style of her wedding dress. She dragged Li Lei to place an order, sweetly measured the dimensions and made several modification requests. The clerk entertained them enthusiastically and said with a smile, "Miss Ling, you have a good foundation and look good in whatever you wear. Mr. Li also looks handsome in whatever he wears. The two of you are a perfect match." These words made the two of them look at each other and smile. After coming out of the store, Xiaoling held Li Lei's hand and walked under the Nordic afternoon sunshine. People were flowing in twos and threes on the street, and they all looked unhurried. There were old people playing with cats, and a few children giggling at each other. Chase. It's rare that no one recognizes Xiaoling when she's not in the country. Even if she and Li Lei are very attractive, they will only attract passers-by to look back a few times without causing any confusion or commotion. Xiaoling was relaxed and breathing fresh air. I really wish I could walk on the street like this every day. Li Lei said, if you like it, we can move here after we get married. She smiled and shook her head. In China, she had her career and he had his business. How could it be as simple as just moving? Even the Li family headquarters, the chance of the two of them going there is not high. Seriously, Xiaoling raised her head to look at him. Now that you have taken over the entire family, wouldn't it be bad to stay in the country all the time? The Li family does many dangerous businesses, so it is safe to be headquartered abroad. There is absolutely no possibility of moving to China. After all, Li Lei's running from both ends is not a long-term solution. Li Lei has obviously thought about this issue. He said to Xiaoling warmly, if you like to sing in China, I will accompany you there. There are reliable people at the headquarters to take care of daily affairs, so you don't need to worry too much. The transportation is so convenient now, so I can fly here while you are here. It's not too much trouble for me to go back to the headquarters to take a look when the time comes for the announcement. She nodded and added, I haven't been there for a few days. Li Lei, don't we go back after getting married this time? The new house on the island is almost built and can be lived in directly. Xiaoling said, I really hope that Xiaoyu's matter can be settled before getting married. Speaking of this matter, Li Lei happened to have something to say to her. As for Wang Jingguan's case, the private detective has almost solved it. There is a 99% chance that Xiaoyu killed the person and put the blame on you. Xiaoling stood still, her breathing stagnant. It's really her. Although Xiaoling had vaguely guessed such a result, when she really faced the reality, she still felt painful and unbelievable. I'm so good to her, she murmured. Li Lei understood her feelings very well. No matter who it was, it would not be easy for anyone who treated someone sincerely, only to be framed by that person deliberately and even put him to death. He comforted Xiaoling, it's all over. In fact, we should thank her. Without her, where would we be today? If it weren't for Xiaoyu's murder, Xiaoling would not have a falling out with Pei Ziyan, nor would she have a falling out with Pei Ziyan. Turn over, how could you be reincarnated and fall in love with him? Xiaoling said softly, without her, I would have grown old happily and peacefully with Pei Ziyan. That will not be disillusioned and will not suffer from the bad things that happened later. Li Lei looked at her, just think of me as selfish. I'm very glad that you have been reincarnated. There are thousands of men in this world. Without me, no matter who you fall in love with, I will bless you, but only Pei Ziyan can't. If he doesn't torture you for 10 years, what about 20 years? If he doesn't torture you for 20 years, what about 30 years? Encountering other twists and turns, how do you know that we can grow old together? Don't be naive, Xiaoling, that's a beast. Xiaoling lowered her eyes for a long time before saying, I understand. She has long understood that all the good things Pei Ziyan gave her were illusions, but after all, he was the person she once loved like a moth to a flame, and this illusion was shattered just because of an unjust case. How great it would be if there was no such injustice. I just felt a little emotional for a moment, she said when she raised her head. The sadness in her eyes had faded, and she said to Li Lei with a smile, I am also very lucky that God allowed me to meet you. Fortunately, I met you. The two of them kissed each other on the streets of Northern Europe on a summer afternoon. On the way back, Li Lei told Xiaoling his plan. The key evidence back then was destroyed by Pei Ziyan. It will be difficult to convict Xiaoyu legally unless she admits it personally. Xiaoling, I need you to trap her. If so, let her tell the truth with her own words. Xiaoling nodded, okay. She knew that she disagreed with this matter. No matter how downtrodden her sister was, She was still a top student at Cambridge and had a life on her hands. And what about herself? He is good at fighting head-to-head with swords and guns, and he is no match for his younger sister when it comes to tricking people. She planned with Lilei for a long time in advance, sorted out all the possible conversations, and only then formally went to see Xiaoyu to make sure everything was flawless. Xiaoyu was taken out of the prison and brought to the interrogation room. Xiaoling was wearing a light-colored home shirt and was sitting drinking tea. The golden sunlight in the afternoon shone through the green shade and lightly brushed on her face. She looked very peaceful. Seeing Xiaoyu being pushed in stumblingly, she smiled slightly and said, "Sit down." Hand made another cup of tea and pushed it in front of Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu did not pick her up. During these days, she was tortured to the bone. She looked at her sister with a pair of deeply sunken eyes and said in a cold voice, "What are your plans this time? Why are you so hypocritical?" "I'm not being hypocritical," Xiaoling said, still with a peaceful smile on her face, "I just want to tell you that I'm getting married. Speaking of which, I should thank you. If you hadn't framed me back then, how could I have died?" "How did you meet Lilei?" Xiaoyu said quietly, "I don't understand what you are talking about." "Stop pretending, Xiaoyu," Xiaoling said, "we have found out clearly that you killed Wang Jingguan, and the murderer who pushed me off the stage was also hired by you. You are amazing, killing two birds with one stone. It seems that just by removing two love rivals, a company as big as the Wang family went bankrupt." Xiaoyu said, "You are too flattering to me. I have never done these things. Want to trick her? It's not that easy." Xiaoling was not in a hurry. "Don't you want some tea? This tea is picked from the tea tree planted by Lilei himself. He is really a person who knows how to live. He always takes me everywhere to play and see a lot of things. When I was with Pei Zion, I had to make an appointment wherever I wanted to go. He was such a boring person. I don't know how I could bear it." Xiaoyu's face changed slightly. "You are not allowed to say that to Brother Zion." Xiaoling looked at her. "You really love him, but I don't love him anymore. Now Lilei and I are very happy. Our only worry is that we want to know the truth back then, and we don't want to die in the dark. Xiaoyu, how about you tell me how you committed the crime and I will help bring you and Pei Zion together." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 903. Chapter 903 Confession. Xiaoyu's eyebrows twitched. Could she bring her and Pei Zion together? That man has long become a cinnabar in her heart, a half-life obsession. She had worked hard for so long and killed so many people, wasn't it just to get him? If she could be with him, she would be willing to pay a heavy price. With Xiaoling's help, maybe it can really succeed. Xia Yuqiang suppressed her violent heartbeat and stared at Xiaoling. "Why should I believe you?" Xiaoling said, "Pei Zion has never given up on me, and I am also very troubled. I love Lilei and don't want any changes in my future marriage, so I need to solve the hidden danger of Pei Zion as soon as possible. The best way is to find him a loving wife makes him forget about me." "Xiaoyu, you are the right person." Xiaoyu's eyes flickered. "It sounds good, but I didn't kill Wang Jingguan, how can I admit it?" At this point she is still making excuses. Xiaoling wanted to rush up and shake her, wanted to slap her awake, but in the end she just restrained herself and said in a soft and sweet tone, "Really? As for the matchmaking, pretend I didn't say anything about it. It's not just that, I will also tell Pei Zion that you don't love him at all, it's all for his money, status, and power." After Xiaoling finished speaking, she slowly stood up, picked up the small bag on the table, and walked out. When Yingbei's fingers touched the door handle, Xia Yu's voice came from behind, Xiaoling, don't go too far. Why did I go too far? Xiaoling twisted slightly and smiled. You are allowed to lie, but others are not allowed to lie. Xia Yu, either you tell the truth about Wang Jingguan's incident and the truth about my murder. Otherwise, I will wait for Pei Xian to misunderstand you, dislike you, and never want to see you in this life. Xia Yu looked at her with resentment, and her eyes made people feel chilly in their hearts. Xiaoling was not afraid, so she leaned against the door and looked at her. The two men were facing each other. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Xiaoling opened the door smoothly and saw Li Lei's bodyguard, driver, and life assistant Arnyo standing in front of the door. He said to her respectfully, Miss Ling, the young master finished his official business early today and wants to invite you to Seine in the evening. The club is watching night fishing and has sent me to pick you up. It's getting late. Will you come with me now? Xiaoling glanced at Xia Yu and said nonchalantly, let's go. Turn around and leave. Wait, Xia Yu finally couldn't bear it anymore and shouted. A slight smile appeared on the corners of Xiaoling's lips, but it soon disappeared, and she said to Arnold, you go outside and wait first. Turning around, she walked up to Xia Yu and said in a soft voice, my time is limited. I don't have time to fight with you. If you want to confess, hurry up. If you miss the night fishing, Li Lei will be unhappy. Xia Yu stared at her fiercely, wanting to tear the face of the happy-looking woman in front of her. She still remembered that when she first met Ye Xingling a few years ago, she couldn't be called very beautiful. She was so delicate in the entertainment industry where there were so many beauties, and she couldn't even find her at a glance. But now, her skin is so fair and tender, with a faint luster, her eyebrows are peaceful, her eyes are shining with hope, and she is so beautiful that people feel ashamed in front of her. Only a woman who is pampered can have such brilliance. Xia Yu felt as if a thorn had been pierced in her heart, cursing her for a bad death, but she had to admit that she was envious and jealous of her. Is it true that when you are with the person you like, you can be so happy? She felt relieved and asked softly, what if, after I tell you the truth, you don't match me up with Brother Xian? Xiaoling looked at her and said, we grew up together, you know me, I promise. Why have you ever regretted what you have done? If I say I will bring you together, I will definitely bring you together. Besides, what else can you do besides choosing to believe me? She said, raising her wrist and looking at her watch, why don't you tell me? Really leaving? Xia Yu gritted her teeth, I say. Yes, I killed Wang Jingguan. After the murder, I blamed you. The murderer who pushed you off the stage was also hired by me. Xiaoling's face changed color slightly. When the sister who raised her single-handedly said these words to her, she still couldn't bear it. Her body swayed slightly and she held onto the wall before standing still. It's really you. It's me. Xia Yu became smoother at the beginning of her words. Xiaoling, I've hated you since I was a child. What I hate most is that you got in the way of me and Brother Ziheng. I wanted to kill you a long time ago, but I never had the chance. It was not until later that Brother Ziheng said he wanted to play Wang Jingguan that I realized that the opportunity had come. She looked at Xiaoling and laughed happily, you stupid woman, you actually asked Wang Jingguan to negotiate alone and told me in advance. Didn't this just provide me with an opportunity to make a move? I pretended to be you and went to the black market to buy it. Poison, followed you to the place of negotiation. Xiaoling shook her head, I treated you as my sister at that time and told you everything, but you. Xia Yu sneered, sister? You just need a foil. Use me to make your beauty and kindness shine brightly. Let me tell you, I'm not stupid, I've had enough. No, Xiaoling said, I just want to care about you. I never thought that those words of praise from the outside world would cause so much harm to you. Xia Yu was sick since birth, and Xiaoling was also very sick at that time. She was young, and in a place like an orphanage, who taught her how to understand her sister's jealousy. She just tried her best to give her sister the best. She will be instinctively happy when others praise her and does not feel anything wrong. Even she was just a child, and it was not easy to protect her sister and survive. How could she have thought that comparisons between the two sisters would cause so much harm to her sister? After all, my sister has never let out even a hint of resentment. After being adopted by Pei Xian, Xiaoling lived more openly and openly. She thought that her sister would be as happy as she was. After all, her sister had surgery, recovered her health, and was admitted to a prestigious school. Everything was a good thing. By now, it is too late to discover the truth. Xiaoyu didn't listen to her excuse, and sneered to herself, "I hid the poison in my fingernails." When the waiter was passing by the corridor with the tray, I bumped into him, and with a little trick, I put the poison into it. In a cup of coffee. Don't ask me how I knew that cup of coffee belonged to Wang Jingguan. Xiaoling, you are too picky. In order to protect your throat, you always drink lemonade. The lemonade on the tray must have been ordered by you, so Wang Jingguan must have drank it. Cup of coffee. Sure enough, I guessed it right. I hid in the corner and watched secretly. Half an hour later, you left the box, but Wang Jingguan did not come out. She sat alone in the box for a while, and the poison took effect about an hour later. Then I went in and used the "it's easy to put your fingerprint collected at home on the coffee cup." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 904. Chapter 904. Xiaoyu was arrested. Sure enough, it is the same as the guess given by the private detective before. Xiaoling had no expression on her face and asked, "What's going on with the surveillance cameras?" At first, the police had retrieved the surveillance cameras from that coffee shop, and most of them had their angles adjusted so that they couldn't capture the root of the crime. Only an inconspicuous surveillance camera in the corner was missed, which captured Xiaoling coming out of the box emotionally. Xiaoyu's voice was faint. "I changed the angles of them in advance. To prevent myself from being caught in the camera, and to give the police the illusion that you were planning to commit a crime. As for the one that was omitted, I did it on purpose. That camera surveillance, I walked the only way from the private room to the lobby, and I will definitely be able to photograph you. I left through the garbage passage at the back of the corridor, which is very hidden and cannot be captured by the camera. The police didn't suspect anything. It's very similar to your character, isn't it?" "Sister," Xiaoyu smiled faintly and said to Xiaoling, "you have never been a thoughtful person. Even if you plan to commit a crime, there are always flaws, which only increases the credibility of the real murderer. It's a pity." She sighed. "Brother Xian was too protective of you and used various means to destroy several important pieces of evidence. All my hard work was in vain when the court could not convict you." Xiaoling's heart surged a little when she thought of that man. At first, she only thought that Pei Xian imprisoned her for punishment, but later she found out that it was for protection. Back then, her voice sounded a little hollow, "He was too arbitrary, and I was too willful. If one of us had been less extreme, maybe things wouldn't have turned out the way they did." Xiaoyu said, "Yes, you will only make a noise and cause trouble for him. You are not worthy of him." Xiaoling was quiet and raised her eyes to look at Xiaoyu. "So, tell me everything, Xiaoyu. You are so timid, weak, and considerate, and being with him is a match made in heaven." Xiaoyu said, "You finally have self-awareness." Xiaoling asked her some more details, such as where to buy poison and how to deal with the cleanup, and then shifted the topic to the second case. "What about that time on the stage? Was it the gangster you hired to murder me?" Xiaoyu said, "I originally thought that you would be involved in Wang Jingguan's case, sentenced to death, or killed by the angry Wang family. Unfortunately, the police and the Wang family are useless, and Brother Zion has reached that point. They are still protecting you and protecting you airtight. I was very angry, and I also discovered one thing, that is, as long as you live, no matter what mistakes you make, Brother Zion will never abandon you. I am not willing to do so. So I often go to visit you. In the villa where I was imprisoned, I tried every means to make you collapse and instigate you to commit suicide. As long as you die, Brother Zion will be mine. However, you did not commit suicide. Xiaoling felt horrified when she heard this. Xiaoyu was simply a devil. What kind of sister did she raise? Just listen to Xiaoyu continue to say, I have been observing that little gangster for a long time. He used to be a scalper in the area of the concert venue. Later, he lost all his money gambling and owed a lot of loan sharks. He has an old mother who is bedridden at home. I have a younger brother who is still studying. Although he is a gangster, he loves his family very much. I found him and asked him to kill you and frame you for the young master of the Wang family. In return, I will help him pay off the loan sharks and take care of the sick. My mother and my younger brother who are still studying. Xiaoling said, that's why he listened to you so much, and even if he was sentenced to death, he insisted that it was the young master of the Wang family who instigated it. Yes, Xiaoyu smiled sweetly, the young master of the Wang family is too incompetent. He has been clamoring for you to pay for Wang Jingguan's life, and many people know it. Although he is a coward and has not really taken action, once you are out, combined with the murderer's confession, his suspicion becomes the biggest. Xiaoyu said, what's more, his hair was found in the power distribution room. Where did the hair come from? Xiaoling asked. Xiaoyu said, it's simple, I got it in advance. During the concert, I deliberately didn't sit in the box with Brother Zion, just because I was afraid that it would be inconvenient to go there in the middle. I sat in the VIP seat in the first row, but unfortunately the location there was a reporter sitting next to me. He was looking for opportunities to strike up a conversation with me the whole time, trying to find out from me what you were doing during that year. I couldn't find the opportunity to go to the power distribution room to pull the switch. I'm ready to give up, and I'll try to find a way next time. Who knows that there is always a way out, ha ha ha, you actually sang an additional song called Butterfly in the Cage. Sister, you sing so beautifully, do you know that? As soon as Caged Butterfly came out, the whole venue was shocked. Even the reporter stopped paying attention to me and was absorbed in your singing. I hurried to the power distribution room and left Mr. Wang's hair on next to the electric wire, and using the switch as a signal, the little gangster rushed onto the stage. One stab and you're dead. Silence. Xiaoling didn't speak for a long time. Xiaoyu described the turbulent waves that year so lightly that she felt as if she was listening to someone else's story. Xiaoyu looked at her and smiled, how about it, sister, am I very smart? I'm afraid you can't think of any of these wonderful ideas, right? Only people like me are worthy of Brother Zion. You are not worthy of me. Suddenly, a voice came. Xiaoyu was startled and instinctively looked up, only to see that the door of the room had opened at some point. Pei Zion strode in wearing a suit and slapped Xiaoyu hard twice. Mr. Pei. Don't be impulsive, Mr. Pei, several policemen quickly stopped him. Several other police officers walked up to Xiaoyu and handcuffed her. Xiaoyu, you have been arrested, one of the policemen said. Now you are a suspect in multiple homicides. Please follow us back to the police station for investigation. Xiaoyu looked up in embarrassment, looked at Pei Zion in shock, then turned to look at Xiaoling. Are you trying to trick me? Yes, I just lied to you. Xiaoling made no secret of what happened now. Xiaoyu, I really want to thank you for telling all this in front of the police. They were all in the next room when you said it just now. Listen. See. This is one-way glass. Xiaoling stretched out her hand and gestured to the wall behind the sofa. You can't see the next door from here, but you can see clearly from the next door. After so many years, the evidence has been missing. Without your confession, it would be difficult to convict. Ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. Xia Yu suddenly laughed. She didn't expect that in the end, she would still be in Xiaoling's hands despite her cleverness. Is this her destiny? She smiled and cried tears. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 905. Chapter 905 Looking for Pei Xian. Xiaoling watched her being taken away by the police. The room was empty, with only Pei Xian, Xiaoling, and Li Lei standing behind Xiaoling. Pei Xian held the back of the sofa with one hand, still maintaining the same look as when the police dragged him away just now, looking at Xiaoling with difficulty, his eyes filled with grief. It turned out not to be her. How could I be so obsessed with her that I was so harsh on her in the first place? If he had believed her when she said no, or if there hadn't been those beatings, rapes, and tortures, wouldn't she have become so angry that she wouldn't have broken the jar and confessed to the appalling crime? So, can they be happy? His heart clenched into a ball and it was difficult to breathe. Xiaoling also looked at him. Pei Xian seemed to have suddenly aged 10 years. His sad expression made her almost unrecognizable to him. Isn't he always very strong? This man would never think that he had done anything wrong. Who could he show this grief-stricken look to? Bull. It was just that I was at a loss at that time. Let's go, Xiaoling. It was Li Lei, who gently took her hand and led her out of the room. She gave Pei Xian one last look and followed Li Lei into the car. After closing the heavy car door, she felt exhausted, as if she had fought a fierce war and her body was hollowed out. Li Lei asked her, "Are you tired? I'll give you a massage when you go back." Xiaoling said softly, "No, please send me back to the villa. I want to be alone." After so many years of injustice, the truth was finally revealed, but she couldn't feel the slightest joy, but she understood how big the waves of fate were. It's scary, but fate plays tricks on people. The sister I once cherished turned against her, and the man she once loved became a stranger. Li Lei did not insist and sent her back to the villa and watched her enter the door. He understands that she needs some space to be alone. In her abyss-like painful and unpredictable past, he, an outsider, cannot help. Everyone's past can only be faced by everyone in the end. "I will pick up Xiao Hui from the set later," Li Lei said to her servant. "Xiao Hui will be living with me these days and I will take care of her. You should take good care of Miss Ling." The servant nodded in agreement. Li Lei then left. Xiaoling hugged a feather pillow, curled up her knees, and sat on the bedside. The soft touch of the pillow rubbed against her pale jade cheek. Her watery eyes were half opened, as if she was thinking about a lot of things, but she seemed to be thinking about nothing at all. The sun is getting darker, the last rays of the sunset are dispersing on the horizon, and the sky is filled with stars. Ma Zhou from next door came knocking on the door. A moment later, the maid knocked on Xiaoling's door. Mr. Pei's mother Zhou said she wanted to see you." "Ma Zhou? What is she here for?" Xiaoling moved, put down the pillow, threw on a coat, and followed her servant to the living room downstairs to meet Zhou's mother. Zhou's mother rubbed her hands restlessly. "Miss Ling, I know it's presumptuous to disturb you at this time. But Mr. Chu has been out for a whole day and he hasn't come back yet. The phone can't be reached. Mr. Chu and the others can't be contacted either. I'm really worried. So I want to ask if you know where he went." Zhou's mother remembered that Pei Xian said before going out this morning that he was going to see Xiaoling. Now, Xiaoling has returned early, but where is her husband? Xiaoling was a little startled. Isn't he back yet? Maybe he went to a meeting somewhere and forgot the time, and his cell phone was muted. This kind of thing has not happened before. But Zhou's mother said, "Mr. S. secretary has checked the itinerary and there is no meeting today." No one can find where he is. Miss Ling, all I can think of now is you. If even you don't know where he is, you can only report it missing after 24 hours, but who knows what will happen after such a long time. Ma Zhou is as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. Sir, please don't let anything happen to you. Xiaoling frowned. Wait a minute, I'll give him a call. She took out her mobile phone, hesitated for a moment, and pressed a series of numbers. This number is an exclusive number that Pei Xian specially opened for her. No one knows it except her. At the other end of the phone, the ringing sounded for a long time. Just when Xiaoling was about to give up, someone picked up the phone. Pei Xian's voice was hoarse, as if he was crying. Xiaoling, I'm fine. Hearing that something was wrong with him, she felt anxious and asked anxiously, Pei Xian, what's wrong with you? Where are you now? Everyone is worried about you. But Pei Xian hung up the phone, and no matter how many calls he made, he couldn't get through. Zhou's mother looked at her with worry. Miss Ling, have you contacted your husband? How is he? Xiaoling rubbed her forehead, feeling vaguely uneasy. She knew very well what happened this afternoon. Even now that she had found a new love and was so happy, she couldn't help but need some alone time to resolve the pain of that year, let alone Pei Xian. Over the years, he has been trying hard to save it. When he learned that all the broken relationships were caused by himself and was solely to blame, he felt so regretful and despairing. Xiaoling is also worried that something will happen to him. She asked Zhou's mother, have you ever looked for her? Zhou's mother told her, Mr. Chu has already taken people to look for him, but he didn't find him. Xiaoling was even more worried. Although she no longer loved Pei Xian, she didn't want anything to happen to him. Instinctively, she wanted to call Li Lei and ask him to find Pei Xian's location through the Li family's satellite positioning system, but she pulled back just as she was about to press Li Lei's name. She called Xiaomoyan, brother, please help me check the current location of this phone. Soon, Xiaomoyan sent her the coordinates. It was somewhere on the outskirts of the city, mansion number 89, a private residence that Pei Xian didn't often use. Xiaoling knew where it was. She drove through the crowded city and arrived quickly. The dark red wooden door with the retro texture is mottled, and ivy is entangled with tuberose, which is very quiet. There were two bodyguards standing in front of the door. Xiaoling recognized them as the two who often followed Pei Xian. They stopped Xiaoling. The boss has given orders not to disturb him even if the sky falls. Xiaoling said, tell him I'm coming. The bodyguards did not give in. It's useless even if you come, Miss Ling. Just as Xiaoling recognized them, they also recognized Xiaoling, so their tone was polite, but their attitude was still tough. Xiaoling was very anxious. No matter what happened in the past, she always had the privilege to see him anytime and anywhere. But what about now? Based on her understanding of Pei Xian, she knew very well that he would not take back his privileges to her, so the only possibility was that he did not even want to see her. She became anxious, rushed to the door and slapped the wooden door with her hands. Pei Xian. Pei Xian, open the door. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 906. Chapter 906 Punishment. However, no matter how loudly she slapped her, there was no movement in the door. The two bodyguards knew that she was the boss's most cherished woman and did not dare to stop her too much. They just stood silently. Xiaoling patted more and more urgently, her screams became hoarse, and even passers-by were startled. A lady with a dog looked over curiously, then turned her head to say something to the female companion beside her. Everyone laughed with interest. Xiaoling didn't care about this and just shouted, "Pei Zion, please open the door." It was so urgent that I lost my breath and coughed violently. The red wooden door finally opened. A tall figure of a man stood in the door, lowering his head and looking at her. After missing him for just half a day, he seemed to have aged again. His eyes were sad and his expression was haggard. There was no trace of his usual powerful figure, making him almost unrecognizable. He just looked at her silently, neither speaking nor moving, like a clay statue. Xiaoling was frightened by his appearance and stood there for a moment. A gust of wind blew by, and she coughed again, still hoarse, as if she wanted to cough out her lungs. This time, Pei Zion finally made a move. Without warning, he put her in his arms and held her tightly. His arm was so tight that she almost couldn't breathe. She breathed painfully and struggled to say, "Pei Zion, let go." But he hugged her tighter, as if his whole body was pressing on her, very heavy. With this posture, his body slowly slid down, his arm sliding down her thin shoulders, past her waist, and then past her legs. By the time she reacted, he was already kneeling in front of her. Xiaoling was frightened. "Pei Zion, what are you doing?" Pei Zion said nothing, resting his forehead on her leg, his body hunched and trembling. She had never seen him like this before, so painful and fragile, stripped of all hardness and pretense, so embarrassed and vulnerable. Is this still the person she is familiar with? She was a little at a loss, and more heartbroken. "You get up first." He still maintained that humble posture, motionless. "Pei Zion," she couldn't bear it anymore and shouted. He made a low, vague sound that was almost like a whimper, like a wounded beast. Xiaoling was held by his legs, unable to move. From the corner of her eye, she saw someone pointing on the path not far away, and even a few pedestrians stopped to watch. She is now a well-known diva with an easily recognizable face, and he is also a big shot who often appears in the media. Once the scene of kneeling in front of the door is staged, I have to say that it is really eye-catching. Xiaoling was furious. "Pei Zion, what are you doing? Do you want to be treated as a joke? Even if you are willing, I don't want to play monkey tricks at the door." That's when he made some movement, and slowly let go of her legs little by little. As soon as Xiaoling was free, she immediately stepped into the house and closed the door behind her back. The room was very dark, with no lights on. Only the hazy moonlight shone in slantingly, and it was dark through the gauze curtains. Not far away, broken pieces of porcelain were scattered on the ground. He seemed to have swept away all the furnishings on the table, leaving a mess on the floor. Xiaoling walked over and picked up a piece of debris. There are dark blood stains on it. Her heart skipped a beat, and she returned to Pei Zion, squatted down, and pulled his hand hard. He was still kneeling by the door, his tall body hunched and his head hanging low, as if it was hanging to the ground. Xiaoling pulled his hand under the moonlight. Sure enough, it was covered with deep and shallow cuts, densely crisscrossed. Some were probably injured when smashing porcelain, and some, neat, deep, and long, just like the old scars she'd found on his wrists when she'd attended a cruise party with him many years ago. It's just that this time it's new and the wound is still bleeding. When he was in grief, he always seemed to like to hurt himself. "You're crazy," she scolded in a tearful voice. "Xiaoyu has already confessed her crime, why are you so crazy? She was the one who killed the person, not you, and it will become a moldy old story. Do you deserve to do this?" He said something in a low voice. She didn't hear clearly, so she got closer and realized that he said hoarsely, I'm sorry for you." A simple sentence, but it was so laborious for him to say it. And she was stunned. Once upon a time, she was tortured by his sexual and was in agony. At that time, I even dreamed of hearing him say these words, but after looking forward to it for so long, he never said it. Knowing that she thought she would never hear it forever, She gave up her desire and felt as if she was dead. Now, I heard it when I was caught off guard. So unreal and ridiculous. She turned her head sideways, otherwise he could see the tears in the corners of her eyes. Peizian seemed to have spent a lot of effort before saying another sentence. What should I do to compensate you? The mistake was caused by him. He said he would protect her for the rest of his life, but in the end he hurt her the most. But it was him. He hated himself and wanted to kill himself. Xiaoling said, compensation? There is nothing that can compensate. In her hands, his entire palm and arm were dripping with blood, and under the halo of the moonlight, it was also stained with hers little by little. She lowered her eyes and looked at the blood, then quietly changed the subject. Your wound needs to be bandaged. I'll go find the medical kit with that. She stood up and left. Peizian grabbed her and said, Xiaoling. She finally couldn't hold back her anger and yelled at him, do you think you can make up for it? What can you do to make up for the things you did that were worse than a beast? Peizian, I have been suffering in for a whole year, hell. You understand? Do you know how I came here that year? She fiercely pulled her hand away from his palm and rushed back into the depths of the house. He did not catch up, but held his hands on the ground slumped. Xiaoling was so excited that she rummaged around in the room. She didn't even know what she was looking for. She finally calmed down a little. When she reached out her hand, her face was already covered with tears. She hastily wiped it with the corner of her clothes, looking at the moonlight outside the window. The nightmare from the past resurfaced. At that time, she heard that Wang Jingguan was dead and was in a panic. She was so naive and childish. It was the first time she had come into close contact with death, and she suddenly lost her sense of proportion. Peizian took her panic as a guilty conscience and concluded that she had committed the murder. No matter how she explained, it was useless. She made a lot of noise, which resulted in increasingly brutal beatings and violations. Later, she became afraid and was carried away by anger. She lost her mind and admitted the crime. She still remembers that day, when there were clouds outside the window. She said in a weak voice, yes, so what if I killed him? He stretched out his hand to hug her, but she dodged him. Another abuse followed, as punishment for resisting him. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 907. Chapter 907 Rice with Sugar. Peizian. This name is repeated in my heart 1,000 times. This is the last time, she said to herself, the last time. After tonight, we will never see each other again. She found the medicine box from the depths of the house and returned to him in the front hall. Squat down, take out disinfectant alcohol and gauze, and apply medicine to him. Dip a sterile cotton ball with alcohol and apply it little by little on his wound. It should obviously hurt, but he didn't say a word. After applying the medicine, he asked in a low voice, since you didn't kill the person, why did you admit it in the first place? It's me who is stupid. Xiaoling lowered her eyebrows and collected things one by one in the medical kit. It's not entirely your fault. I shouldn't rely on your favor to be lawless, and I shouldn't think that you really love me. He was struck by lightning and suffered as much pain as if he was about to die. She put away the medical kit and stood up. Let's go, take my car back. Joe's mother is old, don't let her worry. Peizian lowered his head. I love you. Xiaoling smiled softly. Love, she didn't argue with him. She took the car keys and walked out of the house. After taking a few steps, she found that he didn't follow her. She twisted slightly and stood under the moonlight like an illusory elf. Peizian, are you leaving or not? I came to see you at the request of Mother Joe. Now that I have found someone and persuaded you, if you don't leave, I will go back by myself. He then slowly followed the car. The red Porsche slid smoothly into the city night. Pei Xian sat in the passenger seat and remained silent for a long time, like a dying beast, lifeless. When he arrived at the door of the villa, he said, "I will make Xiaoyu pay the price." Xiaoling was startled. "What are you going to do?" The man raised his head, his expression dim in the shadows. "Let me make it up to you and avenge you." "The law will avenge me." Xiaoling looked at him seriously. "Pei Xian, don't do anything dangerous. Xiaoyu will be brought to justice. I don't need your so-called compensation." "Are you worried about me?" he asked. "I'm not worried about you." Xiaoling turned her head back and looked directly at the quiet road ahead without looking at him. "I've had enough of you doing so many crazy things in the name of doing good for me. You should go there, live your own life instead of continuing to waste your time and energy on me." He was silent for a moment before saying, "Anyone who has hurt you will have to pay the price." Xiaoling glared at him. "The person who hurt me the most is you." "I have paid the price." Pei Xian's voice was soft and hoarse. "Look, what a heavy price he paid. The most beloved woman fell into the arms of others and never came back." He stared at her deeply. "Xiaoling, Xiaoyu must also pay the price." Xiaoling was most afraid of him speaking like this, in a slow and calm manner, with the final words dissipating in the air, making people unaware of the approaching danger. Whenever he speaks like this, he must be the most angry. Soon, unimaginable and terrible things will happen. She felt uneasy and said again, "Don't touch Xiaoyu." He refused to say anything, opened the car door, and got out of the car. She has never been able to be his master, not even when they were inseparable before, let alone now. With an uneasy heart, she watched him walk into the villa, and Zhou's mother greeted him at the door, looking relieved. She returned to her villa restlessly and lay on the bed tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. The next day, he went straight to the police station and told the police that Pei Xian was not in the right state and to be careful what he did to Xiaoyu, who was in custody. The police comforted her and told her not to think too much. "Miss Ling, you are too tired. We will definitely guard and protect the suspect. It is safe, don't worry." Xiaoling asked again and again before leaving. Maybe it was because the police had done a good job in supervising her, or maybe Pei Xian had changed his mind. The next period of time was calm, and Xiaoyu waited for the day of the court trial peacefully. The cases she committed have had a great impact on society. Firstly, because this is a reversal of an unjust, false, and wrongly decided case, and secondly, because of the identity of the parties involved in the case. In the first case, the deceased Wang Jingguan was a wealthy and famous lady. In the second case, the deceased Xiaoling was a top queen. In other cases, Bao Renjiu, some insiders of blackmail, etc. were killed piecemeal, and their methods were also extremely cruel. In addition, Xiaoyu is a star herself. Everything makes this trial extraordinarily different. The court hears the case in public. Xiaoyu bowed her head and confessed in front of various media cameras and a national audience. Subsequently, the judge pronounced, the defendant Xiaoyu committed multiple intentional homicides. The criminal methods were extremely cruel, the consequences of the crime were extremely bad, and caused great social harm. This court announced that Xiaoyu was sentenced to death and deprived of political rights for life. Xiaoling and Li Lei were also sitting in the audience listening to the trial. When the verdict came out, Li Lei gently hugged Xiaoling's shoulders. Xiaoling leaned her head next to him and watched Xiaoyu being shackled and pressed down. The reporter's spotlight kept flashing, chasing the woman in prison uniform like a group of sharks chasing blood. Xiaoling only felt it was ironic. Can't help but wonder, is Xiaoyu satisfied now? She had tried so hard to compete with herself, even resorting to various unfair means, just to get the world's attention away from her sister and focus on her. But what about now? All the reporters were chasing Xiaoyu, and no one paid any attention to Xiaoling in the hearing room. "Xiaoyu, are you satisfied? It's time to go." Li Lei gently kissed Xiaoling's long hair. Xiaoling took a long breath and followed Li Lei silently away. Today, she was a little fragile. She said softly to Li Lei in the car, "Don't deal with official business this afternoon. Can you stay with me?" Li Lei kissed her again. "I didn't arrange anything in the first place. I belong to you all day today." Knowing that she was depressed recently, he ignored Xiao Shuai and entrusted the child to Lin Yunan. At this moment, the two of them didn't know how crazy they were. Back in the apartment, he made delicious fruit pudding for her. He heard that sweets can make people feel happy. He hoped that she could get out of the shadow of this incident as soon as possible and become happy again. Unexpectedly, someone from the court came to the door that night. "Miss Ling," they said to Xiaoling, "in a few days, it will be the day of Xia Yu's execution. We asked her what she wanted for the decapitation meal, and she said she wanted to eat the sugar rice cooked by you." Xiaoling was slightly startled. The people in the court were a little apologetic. "I'm sorry, I know this request makes you a little embarrassed. After all, reincarnation can't be true. You are not the real Xiaoling who died. How could you cook for their sisters in the orphanage? What about that kind of rice with sugar? However, this is the last request of a dying man. No matter what, we still have to give you the message. Please give us a reply if you can do it." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 908. Chapter 908, People are immune to all poisons. Xiaoling asked him the specific time for delivering the meal, and promised softly, "Okay, I will do it." The people in the court smiled and called her a good person, thanked her, and left. Li Lei hugged her gently from behind and asked, "Xiaoling, do you really want to do this?" Xiaoling lowered her eyes. "We were sisters after all before she died." The girl didn't want to eat any delicacies from the mountains and seas, but only wanted to eat the simple meals she remembered when she was young, which made Xiaoling feel the softest in her heart. It trembled slightly. She told Li Lei, at that time, the orphanage was a big pot of rice. As long as every child was fed, it didn't matter whether it tasted good or not. Xiao was not in good health and often had fevers. When she had a fever, she was very picky about food and would eat everything. "I couldn't eat it. I dissolved the saved candy in water and soaked it in the rice." She could eat some of it. Actually, the rice was not delicious, but it was delicious to the two sisters at that time. Li Lei didn't expect it to be so simple, so he said, "Since we've decided to do it, why not make it richer?" Xiaoling said, "She probably misses the taste of her childhood." She smiled a little self-consciously. "I originally thought that she had long been cold-blooded and heartless. When people are about to die, they will have some good thoughts." Li Lei was unmoved. No matter how nostalgic she is, she can't change the fact that she killed so many people. Xiaoling said, "Maybe." Li Lei saw that she was a little unhappy, so he offered to accompany her to prepare rice with sugar. So, Xiaoling took him to the orphanage and asked the old director, "When Xia Yu was still here more than 20 years ago, what brand of candy was distributed in the orphanage every time, and is it still available now?" The old dean called the logistics director. "It's long gone," the logistics director said, rubbing his hands. At that time, the hospital had no money and could only afford the cheapest candies, which were Sanwoo products produced in small underground workshops. "I have relied on you all these years, I mean you thanks to the past life of the late Queen Xiaoling. There is an endless stream of donations from the Pei family and people in society. By the way, there are also donations from you and Mr. Li. The conditions of the orphanage have improved a lot, and all the candies have been replaced. It has become a regular manufacturer." Xiaoling was happy for the orphanage, but also a little disappointed. "Can you tell me where I can buy the original candy?" If she wanted to make authentic soup and rice, she had to buy the candy in her memory. The logistics director was a bit embarrassed. It turns out that we bought those candies at a grocery store in the town. A few years ago, the owner of the grocery store passed away, and the owner's wife moved with her son. I don't know where she moved. Xiaoling thanked him and the old dean and said goodbye. She used Li Lei's connections to first find out the whereabouts of the grocery store proprietress, and then through the proprietress to find out about the small underground workshop that produced candy. Unfortunately, the small workshop has long been raided by the police. After many twists and turns, with the help of Li Lei, she found the sugar makers who worked in the small workshop and asked them to make a batch of candies according to the original method. These sugar makers were all old and didn't understand why she did this. Some people told her, "Miss Ling, you are a noble person. I shouldn't tell you about the dirty things we did back then. However, I want to tell you, the candies back then were not made of good ingredients, and were filled with various flavors and preservatives, some of which are harmful to the human body. As a noble person like you, please don't eat this kind of candies." Xiaoling thought to herself that she didn't even know how much she ate when she was a child. Li Lei also sighed with emotion. In our country, there is no distinction between rich and poor. Everyone has been immune to all poisons for a long time. What are you afraid of? Yesterday, I and a few brothers ate barbecue in the gutter oil street in front of us. Xiaoling. Several sugar makers. Having said this, the sugar makers no longer shied away and started making sugar using their old skills. Xiaoling was responsible for tasting the food, while Li Lei was responsible for keeping an eye on her and not letting her eat more. He said that although the people of China were immune to all poisons, he still felt sorry for his wife. He was worried that she would eat too much and was extremely nervous. Xiaoling threw the candy into her mouth without blinking an eye, and did not forget to scold him, "Why are you so nervous? It's just a few candies." "Oh, this is delicious. I liked this flavor the most when I was a child." She stuffed it into her mouth again. "Got one." Li Lei snatched the candy from her hand. "Are you looking for candy for Xiaoyu, or are you eating it for yourself? Why don't I see how much you like candy at home, this girl? It's so easy, just leave it alone if you don't eat the beautiful, expensive, delicious, and nutritious top-notch candies from all over the world at home. Why would you come here to eat Sanwu products?" Xiaoling lowered her eyes slightly, her eyelashes fluttering like butterflies. "I don't know why, but I think this taste in my memory is particularly delicious. It's probably because I had to take care of Xiaoyu at that time, so I saved almost all the candies for her. That's why she was a child at that time, and no matter how sensible she was and how much she took care of her sister, she didn't like sweets. But she couldn't. She wanted to leave the candy to her sick sister. This was one of the few joyful things in her miserable and sick life. I've wanted to eat it for a long time." She looked at Li Lei with some aggrievedness. Although Li Lei didn't know what happened to their sisters at that time, he could roughly guess it. He reached out to hold her in his arms and kissed her heart comfortingly. "From now on, no matter what you want to eat, I will cook it for you." "Real offices." So Xiaoling smiled, actually reached out her hand, hooked his finger and gently pulled it. The two of them looked at each other, and they both saw the tenderness and sweetness in each other's eyes that couldn't be melted away. After the candy was finally ready, Xiaoling searched for the kind of rice used in the orphanage, made a large bowl of sugar rice with her own hands, added several dishes carefully cooked by Li Lei, and went to the women's prison. Li Lei asked her, "Do you want me to accompany you?" Xiaoling shook her head, "No, this is between me and her. You don't have to worry, the prison is very safe." Li Lei was still not at ease and insisted on sending her to the prison gate while he stayed outside to wait. It was the first time for Xiaoling to come to a place like this. Looking around, there were grey walls and extremely narrow steel fences everywhere. She was a little at a loss, but fortunately the jailer had a good attitude and asked politely, "Excuse me, what are you doing here? Are you Miss Yasin Ling? Are you really her? The female jailer suddenly shouted. Xiaoling's celebrity face is easily recognized wherever she goes. She said, yes, I'm here to deliver food to Xiaoyu. Yes, Xiaoyu. The execution will be tomorrow. The female jailer was very excited when she saw a big star for the first time. Miss Ling, I am your fan, can you sign an autograph for me? In a uniform underneath, this girl who is only in her 20s is no different from an ordinary groupie. Well, Ying Ying had insomnia last night and stayed up all night. Now she's so sleepy that she can't hold on anymore, so she's going to bed first. There are still 2 chapters left. I'll update them when I wake up at night. It'll probably be very late. Let's get up and read them tomorrow morning. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 909. Chapter 909. Is it abuse? Xiaoling has long been used to dealing with this kind of scene, so she said, can you wait until I finish visiting Xiaoyu? The female jailer then realized that she was rude and said repeatedly, I'm sorry, I'll take you to visit the prisoner right now. Come, please follow me this way. She led Xiaoling into the female prisoner visiting area. The long corridor is very quiet, the dark gray stone bricks are monotonous and solemn, and the dim skylight shines through the high and narrow iron windows, making people feel depressed unconsciously. As if from a very distant depth, there were vague shouts and metal knocking sounds coming from a faint place, echoing infinitely in the silent space, making people feel terrified in their hearts. The footsteps of the 2 people also echoed in the silence. After walking for an unknown amount of time, the female jailer stopped, opened a door with the iron key she carried with her, and said to Xiaoling, Miss Ling, we're here. Please wait here for a while, Xiaoyu will be here soon. Xiaoling nodded and walked in carrying the thermos box. What you can see is an empty room, divided in half by safety glass in the middle, with a food delivery port and a communication device connected. Xiaoling waited for a while, but saw no one. She turned around and asked the female jailer, isn't she here yet? The female jailer was also a little strange. Normally, she wouldn't be so slow to lead prisoners. She said to Xiaoling, I'll go take a look. As soon as he turned around and walked to the door, he bumped into another female jailer who came in a hurry. Something happened, the other party looked unhappy. He glanced at Xiaoling who was waiting in the room and pulled the former female jailer out. An ominous premonition arose in Xiaoling's heart, and she waited uneasily for a while before the female jailer from before returned. With a heavy look on her face, she said to Xiaoling, Miss Ling, I'm really sorry. This decapitation meal cannot be delivered. Xiaoyu has died suddenly in the cell. Sudden death, Xiaoling blurted out in shock, losing her grip on the rice and falling to the ground. The female jailer said, yes, sudden death. The specific cause of death is still under investigation. According to our preliminary guess, it was probably due to a sudden cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease. No. Impossible. Xiaoling shook her head in disbelief. Even though the girl will be shot tomorrow, it will be a legal matter tomorrow, but why can't she just say she died suddenly? She hasn't had the sugar rice she wanted to eat yet. Xiaoling's mind was in chaos and she was a little dizzy. The female jailer looked at her pale expression and asked with concern, Miss Ling, are you okay? I'm fine, she calmed down and then said, take me to see where he is. Xiaoyu was expelled from the family. She didn't have any relatives, let alone friends. Now she died in such an embarrassment that she could visit only her. The female jailer was very embarrassed, Miss Ling, this is against the rules. I must see her, Xiaoling said. The female jailer shook her head, although I am your fan, The prison has prison rules, so there is nothing you can do about it. Xiaoling felt sad, unwilling to not see her for the last time. She had raised Xiaoyu since she was a child, and she should give him a ride when he died, so that he could start well and end well. She called Li Lei and roughly explained the situation here. Li Lei still had great powers. He told her not long after, "It's okay. You can go." Xiaoling hung up the phone and glanced at the female jailer. At this time, a person walked in from outside the door. He looked unwilling, but still said to Xiaoling, "Miss Ling, you have received special permission from the superiors to enter the cell to check on the deceased." She followed the two jailers to Xiaoyu's cell. The 8-person cell had already been emptied at this moment, and the other female prisoners were nowhere to be seen. Only Xiaoyu was lying lifelessly on her own bed. She was wearing a gray prison uniform, her short fluffy hair was a bit dirty, her face was bruised and her limbs were bent at an unnatural angle. Xiaoling was very angry. How could it be like this? Is it abuse? "We didn't abuse her," said an accompanying jailer. "It was an accident. Everyone is already in the cell. What kind of accident can be so tragic? She will be executed tomorrow. Can't you wait all day? You can't even let her have a good last meal," Xiaoling said more and more. Angry, he looked at the guards accompanying him and said, "You are also talking about cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases. I think you are deliberately hiding it." The female jailer who accompanied her in first sighed secretly, that's why she stopped Xiaoling from checking the body before. Here, even if the guards do not abuse the prisoners, conflicts between prisoners still occur from time to time. Obviously, Xiaoyu is the loser in the conflict. Xiaoling looked at Xiaoyu on the simple iron bed and saw that her limbs were twisted and couldn't help but want to straighten them for her. Unexpectedly, she was grabbed by a jailer. "Don't touch her, Miss Ling, her body is almost falling apart." The doctor touched her when he came in, and her arm almost fell off. Xiaoling said, "This is abuse." The jailer said, "We did not abuse her." Xiaoling was very angry. "I want to find a forensic doctor to examine the injuries and hold the prison responsible." The jailer said, "We really didn't mistreat people like this. Please don't embarrass us." They were very polite to Xiaoling, but they also had a headache. If it were an ordinary little person, they wouldn't stay here and talk nonsense for a long time, but for a woman whose future husband can get permission to visit in a minute, and whose future husband is also the leader of the underworld, they are not willing to offend her at all. Xiaoling sneered, "You want me not to embarrass you? That's fine, tell me the truth." The jailers looked at each other, and one of them said to her, "Miss Ling, Xiaoyu died suddenly due to her own health." This is the truth. Even the girl who just claimed to be her fan also supported this statement. "Very good," Xiaoling laughed angrily, "you think I can't find out, do you? We'll see." After saying that, he slammed the door and left. Li Lei was waiting for her at the door. His slender body was leaning on the off-road vehicle, with one hand in his trouser pocket, looking very casual. Seeing her come out angrily, he asked, "Xiaoling, what's wrong?" Xiaoling said angrily, "Xiaoyu's death is mysterious. I want to find out the truth." Li Lei said, "She has tried to kill you several times, why do you need to help her again?" Xiaoling said, "Just because her last meal was to eat sugar mixed with rice. In fact, there was a faint fear in her heart that she had not expressed. Before, Pei Xian had promised to take revenge on Xiaoyu. Could it be him?" Of. Li Lei said nothing more and only helped her launch the investigation. A few days later, he told her, "The prison system is very strict and it is difficult to break into the inside, but I found out a piece of news here. Gu Lin was also imprisoned in that prison, and before the incident, she was released with Xiaoyu Feng. Maybe she knows something." Gu Lin? If Li Lei hadn't mentioned him, Xiaoling would have almost forgotten this person. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 910. Chapter 910 The Brutal Prisoners. After she killed 2 orphans, she was sent to prison to serve her sentence. I wonder what she is doing now. Xiaoling went to prison again, this time to visit Gulin. When Gulin was brought to the interrogation room, she was wearing a half-worn prison uniform. Her originally moist skin had now become shriveled and sallow, her cheeks were deeply sunken, and under her short, messy, dry hair, she revealed a pair of terrifyingly large but dull eyes. Eyes. With a dull look on her face, she sat down opposite Xiaoling through the glass. Xiaoling asked, "How did you do this?" Miss Gu in my memory cares so much about her appearance. She carries a spray and a small mirror to touch up her makeup anytime and anywhere, and does not allow herself to have any flaws. What about now? They are completely different. Hearing what she said, Gulin raised her head, with flames of resentment in her eyes. "Yes, Ling, I didn't expect that the person who came to visit the prison was you. Don't you just want to watch my joke? You won't succeed." Xiaoling said calmly, "Isn't your current appearance ridiculous enough?" "You," Gulin slapped the table and was about to rush forward and hit her. However, her forehead hit the transparent bulletproof glass, and a big bump suddenly bulged. She covered her forehead and shrank in pain. Xiaoling looked at her quietly. After she was done with the pain, she said, "I don't have time to waste time with you. I have a few questions to ask you. You should think about it clearly before you answer. If you answer well, I can agree to a request that does not violate the principles within my ability. If the answer is not good, I will go back and tell Lilei that his sister Gulin has now turned into an ugly and crazy woman." "How dare you?" Gulin was instantly angry again. "What are you afraid of?" Xiaoling looked at her, feeling calm. "Brother Lei won't listen to your nonsense." With 2 clicks, Xiaoling suddenly took out her phone, pointed it at Gulin, and took 2 photos. Gulin instinctively turned her head to hide, but it was already too late. Xiaoling admired the photos for a while, then pointed the phone screen at Gulin to show her appreciation, and chuckled, "Your brother Lei may not listen to my nonsense, but what if you add these photos? You were still a beautiful girl before he didn't like you when you were a young lady. If he finds out that you have become ugly, he will despise you for the rest of his life. You're looking for death." "Bitch," Gulin yelled. Xiaoling was not angry at all. "I give you 3 seconds, you can choose to accept my question, or let me go back to Lilei with these photos." 3, 2. Before she counted to 1, Gulin stopped cursing. "What are you asking?" she said viciously. "Very good." Xiaoling leaned forward slightly and looked into her eyes. "Gulin, you have served in prison for so long, you should know the situation inside. Let me ask you, how did Xia Yu dead?" Gulin was stunned. "So, you are doing it for Xia Yu?" "Although she is a death row prisoner, since I worked so hard to prepare her a decapitation meal, I will not allow her to die in an unknown manner. At least, she must be worthy of my share of the meal," Xiaoling said. Gulin looked at her and suddenly laughed. At first, it was a low laugh that could not be suppressed. Soon, the laughter grew louder and turned into an uncontrollable wild laugh. Xiaoling frowned, wondering what kind of medicine she was selling in her gourd. It wasn't until she was almost laughing that she reminded, "My time is limited, I can send your ghostly appearance to Lilei at any time." Tears. "Yes, Ling, you don't know why she died? Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha ha, it really makes me laugh to death. How can there be a like you who pretends to be innocent in the world?" Xiaoling was even more puzzled. Could it be that Xia Yu's death was related to her? She pressed her hand on the send button of her phone and looked at Gulin without saying anything. Gulin barely stopped laughing, and regained her ferocious look, looking at her. "Bitch, don't you just rely on your fans? Xiaoyu was killed by your fans. Xiaoling was really surprised. What? Gulin rolled up the sleeves of her large prison uniform and showed her the scars on her hands. She saw that the fair arms that were once the daughter of a rich lady were now covered with deep and shallow traces of cigarette burns, old and new. Densely packed, with a few deep and long wounds where the skin and flesh were rolled. These are all good things done by your fans, Gulin said. In this prison, where the guards can't see them, they are Wang Fa. Are there any fans of mine in prison? Your fans are everywhere. Gulin put down her sleeves with a sarcastic smile on her face. There are several major forces among the prisoners, and the largest one is the female demon Lillian of a drug gang. She is a big fan of yours, I mean, a big fan of Yexin Ling and Xiaoling. She has gathered all the prisoners who admire you together, specifically looking for trouble for those who look down on you. Once upon a time, there was a female prisoner who said, Yexingling's songs are all rubbish. Lillian gathered a group of people and beat her until she couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. Of course, the person they like to beat the most is me. Who said I have really offended you, made you a stumbling block, and even been the love rival of a like you, Gulin said as she spoke. Gnashing his teeth again. Wait a minute, Xiaoling corrected her, when did you become qualified to be my love rival? Li Lei has never acknowledged you. No matter how you behave, you are just a one-sided imaginary enemy. You, Gulin was furious again. Xiaoling smiled and said, you're already in jail, so don't keep thinking about the man you can't get. It would be nice to serve his sentence peacefully. Gulin, as a human being, the most valuable thing is to have self-awareness. Gulin glared at her fiercely, don't be too proud. Be careful of being abandoned. Li Lei will not abandon me, Xiaoling said calmly, go on. Gulin was furious, why? I won't say anything. Xiaoling shook the photo in her hand. Gulin was immediately discouraged and could only continue, in the name of protecting you, they tortured me in various ways. For a period of time, I was particularly afraid of the prison guards leaving. As soon as the prison guards left, no matter where they were, well, even in a cell, as long as there are people, there will be torture. Fortunately, Gulin said, smiling twistedly, Xiaoyu is here. Hearing the key point, Xiaoling sat up slightly. Gulin said, if I only framed you, Xiaoyu actually killed you with a knife and a gun, and even tried to murder your child. The crime is much bigger than mine. Lillian and the others' interests quickly changed. It was transferred from me to Xiaoyu, and I took pleasure in torturing Xiaoyu every day. As for Xiaoyu, who was new to the country and faced the most powerful and vicious gang among the prisoners before he knew anything about it, how could he do it? What's the end? End of this chapter.